I went to Homestead High School, and our senior pranks were usually a little bit more epic than they should have been. And more than just like sticking a bunch of forks in the yard, in the schoolyard. They did that, except for they used metal forks and knives. Don't worry, they used them from the school cafeteria. The lawnmower did go over them, yeah. Another time they stole all the house for sale signs out of the neighborhood and put them all in the schoolyard. So there was like, I don't know, 100, 200 of them. So the school was for sale by everyone. You know, stuff like that was a typical level of prank they did until they had one of their parties out at the pavilion out the environmental science area and burned it to the fucking ground. That was a little bit more of an extreme prank on their end. So they claim that it wasn't a prank, that was just an after football game party with the elite popular people that happened. So, of course, no one went to jail. No cops were really involved because everyone at this level was the in crowd. So their daddies were all lawyers and doctors and lawyers and lawyers of lawyers. So it was all just kind of quieted up. What they did start instead was a fundraiser to rebuild the pavilion, which was just a crappy little building pavilion with a bathroom, boys and girls bathroom, and maybe like 10 square feet inside, and then an overhead porch with a couple picnic tables. And we had class like once or twice out there in middle school or something, or in high school once before it burned down. But that summer, they ran a fundraiser drives and can drive and everything else. And then they magically had a log building built. And they built this as a teaching device also. So you got to see, traditional solid wooden logs that were, huge, 3 feet, 4 feet across. Not to mention the main center timber, you could walk down the whole thing without having problems of slipping over each side. And they showed the kinking in the side that you put and how that's layered and done with that. And the whole thing, they built it up in like, I don't know, maybe 6 months after they got funding. So they must have had a shit ton of funding to rush a build like that. And it went up, poof, and it was done, and it was immaculate. We had class actually in winter times, a couple out there for environmental science and stuff. Looking back on it now, I wonder how much insurance paid and how much kickbacks were made and who made money on all that. Because I'm sure some of these people owned construction businesses and took huge tax write-offs on it to get that thing donated and built that quick to that level. I mean, they burnt down a little building and they built a fucking log camping lodge there. So, which don't get me wrong, we benefited nicely from our environmental area. We had the pond right across. We had miles of trails going back out with critters and swampland and different types of rockland and different types of habitat through there, so you could see the micro habitats and what would happen on a smaller scale to the mosses and all that happy shit. Then they built, which I got to help build one summer, a rappelling tower, which is just like what you think it is. They took a bunch of tall telephone poles and joined them together and stacked them all the way up, like 60, 80 feet up. And then we clad the sides of it and we put on two sides climbing handholds. They're the special handholds in different positions that climbers use to climb up it. They put 2 different types on 2 sides here. The other side was left open, and one other side was left smooth. The smooth side, that was for us to rappel down, because nothing sounds, hey, let's build a cool-ass tower, then let's go rappelling. So we went up it, and we rappelled down the side of this fucking tower. I learned rappelling with pulling the rope in and out to go down. It was kind of neat. You got the two different types of rigs on your belt. You got the figure 8 at the time and one that looked like a ram's head with the horns. And the horns, you'd wrap it around to tie off. The figure 8, you just hold it all the way out. Or was it all the way in? I forget now. You figure out real quick. One way makes you go, the other way makes you stop. And you just bounce down. There's a few other rules that you learn, like you're not really supposed to bounce. You're just supposed to drop and walk your way down. We're learning this environmental science because if you're doing like high tree work or something, you need to learn the rope work. If you're working one of the watchtowers, if you're one of the firefighters, stuff like that, they learn this rappelling and stuff. Mountain climbing, it's something you learn. But you also learn is that they don't show in the movies too often because they use fake rigs and cranes. But when you're really rappelling, the scariest part is when you step off of the curve the first time. From here to here is the scariest part. Once you're here, the rope holds you and it's cool. But this part right here is like a leap of faith, like learning to float on your back in water, something that you just have to do. And the other thing they don't show you in the movies is you have to keep your feet straight out like this and against the wall. If your feet go down too low, which naturally happens because you're trying to, then you just go face first into the wooden side. Everyone does that at least once. I caught myself so I didn't fucking hit my head or my nose into the side. But then you go down and that was all cool. Well, my environmental science teacher didn't like teaching in a classroom because of environmental science. And even though they gave him environmental science area, which was huge, and money to build the building, and money to build the rappelling tower, and money for the wood chip piles, and money for the huge lake and dock and all that, he still liked to take road trips whenever we could, field trips. I took more field trips in high school in that class than I did any other class ever. Ever. We went to a old gravel pit. That was only like 60 miles away, so now it's actually about 2 hours away. And we went rappelling there one afternoon, where he ties off the ropes onto a big-ass tree on top of a gravel pit. Mind you, it's tied to a tree. And then we tie the belaying rope to the same tree and throw them down, and there's some other student, another kid, at the bottom, keeping the one rope untangled, and another kid holding the safety rope. So the safety rope loops back over the top, and in theory, if the main rope breaks, the person on the bottom can grab this rope and keep you from plummeting to your death. In actuality, what's probably going to happen is the kid on the bottom holding this one ain't going to be paying attention, and you're going to plummet to your death anyway. So you just hope your main rope don't break. And you step off the side of this. It's a gravel pit wall, so it's gray and jagged rock going down, and you step off, and as I'm noticing, wow, they should put more stuff there between where the rope is rubbing on the rock and stuff. It's going to eventually cut into the rope pretty quickly and more times than you'd think. And I'm going down, and the rock is, and I'm not the first one down. I'm like 5th or 7th down out of the class. And I'm still like, wow, there's still just a lot of loose rock on this wall, because it's an old gravel pit. The bottom way down there is full of water. Okay, some of you don't know what gravel pit is. There's areas that have solid rock or gravel, even gravel and rock, and they just mine it out. Not for the precious metals, but for the actual rock. And they get down so far down, and they usually fill up with water then. And most of the time, the water turns out to be very cold, but very crystal clear and good for swimming. You go down in a swimming hole then. Or in this case, it happens to be fenced off, and anyone who's there is trespassing, which is what we were actually doing when we were doing that. And so then I'm going down, I'm like, there's gravel just coming down and, chunks of rock if you hit your feet on it. Much different than the tower. You actually got to pay attention when you're going down rappelling down something natural as opposed to something man-made. I get to the bottom and, signal up for the next person coming. It's one of the preppy rich girls, mind you, because I'm up on the poor part. So here I watch the rich one come down, and she goes and doesn't remember about her feet so much, because she wants to look good, and smack! Just face first right into the side of the fucking wall. Blood splatter like a moth hitting your windshield at night. Just all over the stone wall, and she falls out. She falls a little bit. They try to catch her. She catches herself. She's crying all the way down. And I'm stifling a laugh. Not very good, but try and stifle a laugh. And afterwards, I learned one lesson. No matter how rich you are, if you ain't paying attention, your ass is going to get smoked, and you're going to need to buy a new nose. And with that, puff, puff, pass, no parking on the grass, I'm out of here.